Okay, friends, we're about to go live. Thank you for hanging in there. We had a little glitch. We're almost ready to get started. Okay, we're now on the Facebook. We're on the YouTube. I'm just going to share the page. Give me just one moment. And then we're going to begin. Okay, now I'm going to put a link here for the source sheet. So if you look in the comment section, there's going to be a link in this for the source sheet that you can follow along today. There we go. Okay, so I've posted the link in the source sheet. You can download it on your computer, print it out, however you wish. And we're going to get started. We're here for our Talmud for Beginners course. So a brief word about what we want to do before we get the course started. I like the name Talmud for Beginners because no matter how much Talmud you have or you haven't studied, you're a beginner. So some of you say, well, I've studied a lot of Talmud for most of my life. Some of you have told me, I got a lot of feedback, I haven't studied Talmud in 35 years. Some of you have said, I've never studied Talmud before. It doesn't make a difference. No matter how advanced sometimes you may feel you are, or someone may feel they are, you approach a page of Talmud, it's fresh, it's new, there's so many layers of depth you can go into. So we're gonna go on this journey together studying this passage of Talmud. Now, what is Talmud? Talmud, or Gemara, is the Aramaic way of saying Talmud. It's really a collection of discussions among great Jewish sages for about 5-6 centuries. So about a century before the turn of the Common Era, for the next 5 centuries after the Common Era. That is the Talmud. And what does it talk about? Well, what happens when great sages come together? What do they talk about? Well, they're bright, they're learned, they're curious, they're devoted, they're pious, they're passionate. All of their conversations are really, really special. They may talk about Jewish law, they may talk about biblical interpretation, they may talk about history, they may talk about life's phenomenon, about life's experiences, birth, marriage, death, and everything in between. And everything that they spoke about was so precise, so deep, so profound, that there is truly so much that we can learn from in every single word. In our course that we're going to be doing now, Behind the Scenes from Sinai, it's not so much of a course of Jewish law of halacha, it's more of a course of Jewish history, going back to the episode at Mount Sinai 3,300 plus years ago, and trying to piece together some of the verses from the Torah and many other different commentaries and ideas expressed of what exactly went on during the Jewish people's camping, their stay at the foot of Mount Sinai. We're learning from Tractate Shabbat. We're going to be beginning on page 86b, and we'll, throughout the weeks, over the next 5 weeks, we'll go through some very important passages, very interesting ones, very beautiful teachings that will help us really prepare for the upcoming festival of Shavuot. So let's get right into it. I prepared the source sheet, which you can download. You have the link in the comments on the YouTube, on the link on the Facebook page. Download that so you'll be able to follow along with what we're going to learn. Behind the scenes at Mount Sinai. Class 1. Did Moses change God's mind? Is it possible to change God's mind? Let's think about this. And what would you change God's mind about? I mean, today we think about all the things. If I were God, what would I do? So they say there was a meeting of 3 great people having a conversation with each other. If I were God, what would I do to the world? So one person said, well, if I were God, I would eradicate coronavirus and all disease and all illness from the world. And the other person said, if I were God, I would eradicate war or starvation or hunger or poverty. Everyone had their ideas what they would do to the world if they were God. But finally, one person spoke up and he said, if I were God, I would do exactly as God is doing. Which means God knows what he's doing. We don't necessarily know all the time, but God knows. So then why is Moses trying to change God's mind? What's going on over here? Let's get straight into it. In order to understand the passages we're going to be studying from the Talmud today, there's an important introduction that we're going to have to go through in order that we're going to be able to figure out what the Talmud is discussing. The introduction is the passages of the verses from the Torah in the book of Shemot, in the book of Exodus, chapter 19. It's 16 verses, verse 1 to 16. It's in the portion of Beshalach. Ev Yitro. Let's go through it. You have it on the source sheet. It's source number 1. I'm going to just read through the verses and try to figure out how the Torah is mapping out the timeline, the chronology of what happens when the Jews arrive at Sinai, all the way through. They're there for a number of days or longer till the giving of the Torah. What happened in between? What kept them busy? This is going to be the subject of today. Verse 1. In the 3rd month of the children of Israel's departure from Egypt, on this day, they arrived in the desert of Sinai. Which day? They journeyed from Rephidim and they arrived in the desert of Sinai, and they encamped in the desert, and Israel encamped there opposite the mountain. Moshe ascended to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "So shall you say to the house of Jacob and tell the sons of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. And now, if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a treasure out of all peoples, for mine is the entire earth. And you shall be to me a kingdom of princes and holy nation." It's a very famous verse, the proclamation that God makes to the Jewish people. When did this happen? We'll have to see. "These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel." Moshe came down the mountain, summoned the elders of Israel, and placed before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. And all the people replied in unison and said, "All that the Lord has spoken, we shall do." And Moses took the words of the people back to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I am coming to you in the thickness of the cloud, in order that the people hear when I speak to you, and they will also believe in you forever." And Moses relayed the words of the people to the Lord. Which words of the people? They hadn't said anything. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and prepare them today and tomorrow, and they shall wash their garments." When is today? When is tomorrow? Why are they washing their garments? "And they should be prepared for the 3rd day. From the 3rd day, the Lord will descend before the eyes of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And don't forget, you shall set boundaries around the mountain, because nobody's allowed to climb up the mountain or touch its edge. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. No hand shall touch it," etc., etc. Number 14, Moses descended from the mountain to the people, and he prepared the people, and they washed their garments. He said to them, "Be ready for 3 days. Do not go near a woman." It came to pass on the 3rd day, when it was morning, there was thunder, lightning, a thick cloud was upon the mountain, and a very powerful blast of a shofar, and the entire nation that was in the camp shuddered. Those are the first 16 verses in chapter 19 of Shemot. A lot happened over here, where the Jews are arriving to Mount Sinai, and it seems like the giving of the Torah was not that day, but it was some days later, and in between, there's all these communications. Moshe's going up the mountain, God is communicating to him, Moshe's bringing word back down to the Jewish people are responding, Moshe's taking their word back up to the mountain to God, and Moshe's going back and forth, up and down this mountain. You have to think to yourself, this is not even though Har Sinai was a small mountain, but it's not an easy hike to go up and down and up and down, and all these different communications and things that the Jewish people have to do to prepare themselves. So here's some questions that we have. There's many more. I've just put down 3 on the sheet. On what date did the Jews arrive at Mount Sinai? Question number 1. Number 2, on what day or date did God give the Jews the Torah? Question number 3, what did the Jews do on each day leading up to the giving of the Torah? We heard about bordering around the mountain and washing their clothes and separating from their wives, and they responded that all that God will do, we will hear. Naaseh v'nishma, that's a very famous verse that we know. It's also brought down in later verses. How do we understand fully these texts? This will be the discussion of the Talmud, and then it gets into something really, really juicy. Now, source number 2 that I put on the sheet, actually, I'm not going to go through with you, but is a clue into the Talmud's interpretation of the text. So it's been divided not by verses, but by ways that the Talmud divides it based on days. And we're not going to go through it now because it doesn't even stick to the text. Sometimes half a text belongs to one day, another half a text belongs to another day, which is why the verses are so cryptic over here. So that's for you to review later after we've studied the Talmud. What I want to do with you now is get straight into the Talmud learning. It's on Talmud Shabbat, page 86b. We're going to go through 87a. So the way the Talmud pages work, there's a folio, page 86, and then there's side A and side B. So it's daf, the daf are the two sides, daf pei vav, daf 86, and then there's amud, the sides, amud aleph, amud base, side A, side B. So we're beginning on side B of page 86. You have it there in Hebrew and English. I want to make one word about the translation. It's not my translation. I took it from online, from Sefaria. You'll see there's bold and there's unbold. The bold is the literal translation of the Talmud text. What's not in bold is the translator filling in the gaps. When you're translating a cryptic Aramaic text, you need to fill in the gap with some words that make it make sense. So if you were studying Talmud from the original text, you wouldn't have all that fill-in. We're lucky to have that in our translation today, although it may not be halacha l'Moshe Sinai, may not be, it's not God-given, it's human-made, so we have room to discuss, based on the original Talmud text, what the interpretation is. Let us begin the Talmud right away. Tana Rabbanon, the sages taught, B'shishi b'chodesh nitnu aseres hadibros. On the 6th of the month of Sivan, God gave the 10 commandments to the Jewish people. Rabbi Yossi says, B'shiva bo. No, it was not on the 6th of Sivan, it was on the 7th of Sivan. So classic Talmud, we have an opening in a new section, and it begins with a disagreement. A disagreement between opinion number 1, who says the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan, and Rabbi Yossi says, no, it was given on the 7th of the month of Sivan. Who is the author of opinion number 1? We're not told. So the rule is, when we're not told who the opinion is, we're assuming it's the Chachamim, or the Rabbanon. It's the sages. The majority held that the Torah was given on the 6th of Nisan. The Rabbi Yossi argues, and he says, he's a single opinion, and he says, no, it was given on the 7th of Nisan. Okay. 6th, 7th, they're just pulling this out of the hat. Where do they know this from? So we have to try to figure out, did you notice in our original biblical text that we read, they didn't give any date when the Torah was given? How do they even know when it was? That's what we're going to try to figure out now. Amar Rava. So Rava says, let's analyze this argument. Now, he teaches us a very important lesson over here. When you have two people arguing with each other, and you're trying to understand the argument, you're trying to empathize with them, you're trying to figure it out, maybe you're trying to even resolve the argument, the first thing you need to do is to first figure out, what do they agree on? Because once you figure out what they agree on, and there may be more than you think, you'll get much closer to figuring out what they argue on, and then you may be more empowered to actually resolve that argument, which is an important life lesson. Very often, there's an argument between you and someone else, or two people, and the argument gets so heated and so emotional and then so clouded that we throw in things that are not even relevant to the argument, or we're not even focusing on what we really do agree on, which could help us resolve the argument or understand each other better. So Rav is going to open up and say, what do the Chachamim, the sages, and Rabbi Yossi agree on? And then we'll figure out what they're arguing about. So Amar Rava says, Dekul liyalma, everybody agrees, B'Rosh Chodesh also Bar Sinai, that the Jewish people arrived in the Sinai desert, at the foot of Mount Sinai, on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, on the 1st of Sivan. How do they know that? Why does everybody agree? So the Talmud says, I'll give you a scriptural source. It doesn't say clearly in the Torah. If you remember, when we read the opening verse before, in source 1, we just said, on this day, in the 3rd month, on this day they arrived at Sinai. The 3rd month, that we know, it says in the Torah. Which day of the month? On this day. And which day is this day? So the Rava in the Talmud is going to tell us we do know from these words, but it's a bit of a code. What is the code? The code is based on a very important principle of elucidating and interpreting the Torah. So a bit of background. The Torah's texts are very cryptic, and often we can't understand a lot. From many, many mitzvot, there's so few words that are given for us to understand and extrapolate so many laws. So how do we interpret the Torah? Well, it's not open to however you wish, okay? There's no such thing as a text that you can do what you want with it and you can play around. No, you can't put in whatever you want in the text. The text has a meaning. You just have to try to figure out how to get to that meaning. So when a text is given, principles for interpretation are given as well. So, we know throughout history, going back to before the Common Era, there was the great Hillel. Hillel developed or introduced or taught us 7 methods of interpretation. Rabbi Yishmael famously taught us 13 methods of interpretation. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Yossi Aglili, gave us 32 methods of interpretation. There's a very famous one as Rabbi Yishmael, because we say it every day in the davening. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Bishlosh Esrei Midot HaTorah Nidreshet. The Torah can be interpreted to 13 principles of 13 methods of interpretation. The second one, the first one we're going to get to later on today, but the second one, he says, is called Gzeira Shava. Gzeira Shava. We need to understand this because we're going to have it now in the Talmud. What is Gzeira Shava? Identical words. So you have a word in the Torah, and it's subject to interpretation. It could mean this or it could mean that. If you find the same word in another place in the Torah, and there it's clear what its meaning is, then you can match the two words together and say, if the word means that over there, then the same word used here can be interpreted in the same way. Now, originally, it's a very profound method. It's used many, many places for many laws that you're familiar with, but you don't know where we get them from. Originally, it was when you had a word, it was exclusively these two words in the whole Torah, all of Scripture, that they're not mentioned anywhere else. So if here it means that, and there it means that also. Later it became more of an open thing, where even if the word is used in many places with different interpretations, but if in one place it can mean this, then in another place it can mean this as well. Now, you ask, well, now we can just mix and match anything. So the answer is, as the Talmud says, no rabbi, no sage was allowed to create or develop or come up with their own Gzeira Shava interpretation. The only Gzeira Shava interpretations that we accepted were the ones that were received from teacher, from teacher, from teacher, from teacher, all the way to Moses, I guess. So every Gzeira Shava, where we link these two identical words and we learn out many important laws from, is originally coming all the way from Moses' interpretation that I guess he learned from God. Now that you understand this Gzeira Shava, let's go back to the Talmud. Rava has just told us that everybody agrees that the Jews arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the first of the month of Sivan. How does he know? Because he says, Ksiv Hacha, in our verse that we read earlier, it says, Bayom Hazeh bo midbar Sinai, on this day they came to the Sinai desert. And he uses the word Hazeh, this day, Ksiv Hasam, and actually earlier in the Torah, before the Jewish people left Egypt, 2 weeks before they left Egypt, God gave them a command, and the command was HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chadashim. This month for you should be the beginning of all months. Simply put, it means this month, the month of Nisan, is going to be the first of the months of the year. Nisan is the first month of the year. But the Talmud interprets deeper. Not only is God saying this month is the first of the month, but he's also teaching the Jews a law about Rosh Chodesh, about the first of the month. In fact, he's teaching Moshe and the Jewish people on the first of the month when the new moon appears, you dedicate as a sacred day called Rosh Chodesh. And he in fact shows Moshe how the new moon should look, and that way you can dedicate Rosh Chodesh. So when it says, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, this month for you, this month will be the head of the months. And on what day? We know which month God said it, but on what day did God say it? He said it in the month of Nisan, and on the first of the month of Nisan, because he was teaching Moshe about Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month. So HaChodesh Hazeh, The word Hazeh means the first of the month of Rosh Chodesh. Similarly, in our text, that the Jews came to Midbar Sinai, to Sinai Desert, Bayom Hazeh, on this day, Hazeh, there it means Rosh Chodesh, here it also means Rosh Chodesh. And based on that, the Gemara says, Malahalri, the Jewish people arrived at Sinai on the first of the month of Sivan, which, when it turns Rosh Chodesh Sivan, it's a very special day. We celebrate the day that the Jews came, and we're told when they came to Sinai, it was Vayichan Sham Yisrael, the Jewish people camped there, and the Torah uses the word in the singular tense. He camped there, not they camped there. They came there with great unity, with great love. They were all on the same page. Very rarely are Jewish people like that. Normally there's many opinions and many arguments and many disagreements, but coming to Sinai, they were united as one, ready to receive the Torah. It was on the first of the month of Sivan. That's one thing they both agree on. They agree on a date. Now we're going to learn a second thing they'll agree on, and it's a day. The problem will be that the day and the date don't match each other. That's going to be our dilemma. Next passage. Udekuli Alma, Rava continues, what else did they all agree on? B'Shabbos nitna Torah liYisrael. The Torah was given to the Jewish people on which day of the week? On Shabbat. Did you know that? The Torah was given on Shabbat. How do we know? And again, it doesn't say clearly in the text, but we're going to use another Gzeira Shava, two identical words to teach us this. Ksiv Hacha, in the 10 commandments that God gave to the Jewish people, what does it say? Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho. Remember the day of Shabbos and make it holy. Uksiv Hasam, and another verse elsewhere. Again, previously, the day that the Jewish people were leaving Egypt, which was when? The 15th of Nisan. The day that it was happening, God says, now you're in the moment that you're enjoying it. But don't forget, remember this day. One day this experience will be over, and it's going to be a year later, a day later, a year later, a generation later, centuries later. Always remember this day. When did God give the command and use the word Zachor? Zachor, remember this day. He gave it on the day that it was happening, on the day of Exodus. So too, the Talmud says, Rava says, when God gave the commandment, it says, Zachor, remember the day of Shabbos. When is God saying the word remember? On the day that it's happening. In other words, on Shabbat. On Shabbat, God is telling us, never forget, every single week, remember what's happening right now. Remember Shabbat. The Gemara says, just like there by the Exodus, the command to remember was on the exact day that it was happening. Here also, it's being given on the exact day that it's happening. The command for Shabbat, which is one of the 10 commandments, is being given on Shabbat. The word Zachor is the same as the word Zachor over there, which is pretty fascinating, by the way, off topic or on topic, that to understand that the Torah was given on Shabbat. It could have been given on any day of the week. There's something very special about the Torah being given on the day of Shabbat, because there's a very important, powerful link between Shabbat, the Jewish people, and God, and the Torah. The Medrash tells us that there are these three entities, God, the Jewish people, and Shabbat, all testify about each other. God and the Jewish people testify and acknowledge the uniqueness, the singularity of Shabbat. God and Shabbat recognize and proclaim the singularity of the Jewish people. The Jewish people and the Shabbat recognize and proclaim the singularity and the uniqueness of God. Moreover, the Medrash says that Shabbat came with a complaint to God. Shabbat complained. A day of the week complained to God and said, Dear God, it's not fair. Every day of the week has a partner. Sunday has Monday. Tuesday has Wednesday. Thursday has Friday. Shabbat, I'm number 7. It's an odd number. I have no partner in the world. And we know everybody needs a partner in the world. Everyone needs companionship. We're designed to live among each other, which is what making this time of isolation pretty difficult, and especially pre-camera, live stream days. Shabbat wants companionship. So God says, no, I gave you companionship. Your companion, your partner are the Jewish people. The Jewish people and Shabbat are linked together. And so at what point do the Jewish people become the Jewish people, this nation? On the day of the giving of the Torah. So the Torah, receiving the Torah on Shabbat, forging us as a nation with our very partner of Shabbat. And it's important to understand. They say, every dog has its day. Every dog has its time. Everything has a unique time when it flourishes, when it's its real self. Most people, some people say, you want to know me? You want to catch me at my best, in my element? 6 a.m. 6 a.m., you got me. 12 p.m., I'm already, my day's over. I'm exhausted. Some people say, you want to catch me in my prime? Look at me at 3 p.m. 3 p.m., I'm roaring like a lion. That's me. Everyone has a time or a day of the week when they flourish. Some people say it's midnight. For some people it's Monday. Some people it's Fridays. When is the time? The time that you really are most yourself. Everything has a time. The time of the Jewish people when we are most ourselves, when we flourish, when we blossom, when we're in our element, when we're our true selves, is Shabbat. Shabbat is our day. 6 days a week, Sunday to Friday, we're a little bit out of our element. We work hard, but it's not the true us. You want to find the true you? Look at yourself on Shabbat. And the great Shalom HaKadosh, Rabbi Shaya Halevi Horowitz, a great Kabbalist, he said, that on Shabbat we like to eat good food and like to take extra rest and extra walks. It's all very nice. But you have to also study extra Torah on Shabbat. Not just also study Torah on Shabbat like you study every day of the week. Extra Torah on Shabbat. In fact, he quotes from the Zohar. The Zohar says that when on Shabbat you get an extra soul, neshama yetera, and Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, the extra soul leaves you. And when that extra soul goes to heaven every Saturday night, one of the first questions they ask that extra soul, the neshama yetera, is, what chidush, what new thing did you come up with in the Torah? What did you learn new or create new in the Torah? So Torah, Shabbat, the Jewish people, it's very deeply linked with each other. And the Torah was given to us on Shabbat. So Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis agree on two things. A, that the Jewish people arrived at Mount Sinai on the 1st of Sivan. They agree that the Torah was given to the Jewish people on Shabbat. So what do they argue about? Because remember, their argument was the Torah given on the 6th of Sivan or on the 7th of Sivan? Let's figure this out. What is their argument? Their argument is, and when was Rosh Chodesh Sivan? When was the first day of the month of Sivan? Rabbi Yossi holds, B'chad b'Shabbat ikva yarcha. Sunday was Rosh Chodesh Sivan. The new moon appeared and the Jewish people dedicated. It used to be by witnesses. Today we have a calendar. But once upon a time, before the calendar days, before we knew that much good enough astronomy, how did we make Rosh Chodesh? You know how it works. The moon, we have a lunar calendar. The moon has about a 29 and a half day orbit. So a month could be 29 days or 30 days. And you have pretty much 6 of each, and then you get a pretty balanced lunar year. But how do you know if the month is 29 days or 30 days? Well, the witnesses have to see the moon, and then 2 witnesses come to the temple or come to the Sanhedrin, to the court, and they testify and they get interrogated. And then they say, okay, you're right, and today is Rosh Chodesh. If they came on the 30th day, meaning the previous month had 29 days, and this court establishes the 30th day as the first day of the next month. If they came on the next day, then the previous month had 30 days, so then on the 31st day will be the first day of the next month. Or if no witnesses came, then we know for sure that a month can't be more than 30 days, so we establish the next day as Rosh Chodesh. So Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis are arguing about when was Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Sunday or Monday. Now that we've said Rabbi Yossi's opinion that Rosh Chodesh was Sunday, before we establish the rabbi's opinion that Rosh Chodesh was Monday, the Gemara goes off on a bit of a tangent and says, okay, now that we have Rabbi Yossi figured out, let's work through all the verses and understand what happened from Sunday. Sunday was the 1st of Sivan, right? They arrive at Sinai on Sunday, and the Torah is being given the end of the week on Shabbat, which is day 7, the 7th of Sivan. Okay, so his opinion is matching up right now. And what happened that entire week? So the Gemara worked through the verses to try to interpret. Look what the Gemara says. Ubechad b'Shabbat, on that Sunday when they arrived at Sinai, God did not instruct Moshe anything. Moshe didn't instruct the Jewish people to do anything. They rested. They relaxed. They unpacked. Because they were so tired from their journey. Just to pause for a moment. They were tired from their journey. I mean, how long was it? Apparently, it wasn't even such a long journey, and the journey in the desert wasn't so difficult because they had the clouds that were easing, smoothing out the path and keeping out the sun. They lived a very pampered, protected life, even in the desert. What are they so exhausted from? Even a bigger question, though, is you're leaving Egypt, and you're being told that in 49 days you're going to be standing at Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah, and you're going to be the Jewish people and become the children of God. And you've been counting every single day, day 1, day 2, day 3, like we count the Omer. You're so excited. And you arrive at the foot of Mount Sinai. And it's happening any day now. You're exhausted, you're tired, you need to rest. Is that how it works? If you've been planning a trip to a really exotic place, planning this trip for 6 months, and it doesn't get canceled because of coronavirus, and you put so much effort into it, and you've never been there before. It's been your life's long dream to get there. And finally, we'll be there in 2 months, and in 1 month, and in a week, and in 5 days. You land. What do you say? You know what? I've got no time to sightsee today. I've got no time to explore the beach, the pool, all the amenities in the hotel. I'm just gonna, well, you're so excited, you run into things, and you try to catch up on every single thing that you can do. What does it mean the Jewish people just relaxed that day? That God, they didn't want. The first thing they should have done when they came to the foot of Mount Sinai is rolled up their sleeves and said, okay, we're ready. What can we do? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains something very powerful. It wasn't that God didn't instruct them to do anything and Moses didn't instruct them because they were tired to give them a break. No. Their avodah, their form of preparation on that day was to do nothing. That was their preparation. You know what that means? Sometimes you want to help a situation. You want to get involved. What can I do? What role can I play? How do I step in and do something? And that's good. But sometimes you want to help a situation or you want to experience, take a step back and just soak it in. Or just gather your senses. Or just stop looking to do and affect and be and experience. Sometimes you're at maybe it's your own wedding or your child's wedding, and you're running around with the guests, and you want to welcome every guest, and you want to serve them, and you want to seat them, and you want to greet them, and you want to hug them, and you want to dance. You don't want to waste a second. But it could be the whole night will go, and you needed to at one point in that night stop, not do anything, not greet anybody, not prepare anything, just take it all in. And then you'll have an everlasting memory. And then you're really connecting with the moment. So that day, the first of Sivan, was a day to connect with the moment by not doing anything. That was Sunday. Let's continue. But Trei B'Shabbat on the second day, on Monday, Amalahu, God gave the command, V'atem til mamlechas kohanim. That's when God said, Moshe went up the mountain Monday morning, and God said, you'll be for me a nation of priests. And Moshe comes down and tells that to the Jewish people. But last on the third day, Moshe goes up early in the morning again to the mountain, Amaluhu mitzvah sakbala, and God commands the mitzvah of giving a boundary around the mountain. And Moshe comes down, right? So this is Sunday, Monday, this is Tuesday. Sunday they did nothing. Monday they were told they're going to be for me a holy nation. Tuesday they're being told to put a fence around the mountain. Ba'arba on Wednesday, on the fourth day, Avod Prisha. They were told to separate from their wives. Why they have to separate from their wives? So here's a Jewish law that says that when a husband and wife cohabit with each other, so the zera, the semen, especially that comes out of a woman's body afterwards, actually renders her tameh, it's a form of impurity. Why is zera, semen, impure? Well, think about it. It is actually holy. It's the potential source for life. So that which possibly could give birth to a life and remains inside a woman's body, of course, doesn't render her impure. To the contrary, it's a sign of purity. It's holiness, and the act of union between husband and wife is holy. But if whatever comes out doesn't stand the chance anymore to produce life, and therefore it's a potential for life that didn't result in life, and there's like a kind of sadness and kind of tragic consciousness over there, similar to the menstruation of a woman. So that's when the seed comes out of a woman, so she would be impure. it's a small degree of impurity, but it's enough of an impurity that God says, I don't want to give you the Torah if you might be in that state of impurity. So husband and wife separate from each other, so that on the third day, or finally when the Torah, because once the semen loses its potency, so it can't produce life anymore, then the absence of it or the waste of it doesn't make impurity anymore. So only for 3 days, however you calculate the 3 days, 3 times 24 hours, or most of 3 days, but 3 days is the time that can render a woman impure because the semen is still potent. So on the 4th day, on Wednesday, God says, separate from each other. And that is we're stopping here in the weekday chronology, and that's the outline of Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Let's go to Rabbanan. So Rabbi Yossi has told us that Rosh Chodesh was on Sunday. Sunday was the 1st of Sivan. They arrived in Mount Sinai, and then there's instructions for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Rabbanan Savri, the rabbis held, B'trei b'shah ba'ik b'yarcha. Rosh Chodesh, the 1st of Sivan, was not on Sunday. Iyar did not have 29 days. Iyar had 30 days, and therefore Rosh Chodesh was on Monday. So on Monday, on Monday they arrive at Sinai, and God doesn't give them any instructions. Moses doesn't give them any instructions because they were weak, as we explained earlier. But Tlasa, on Tuesday, which was the 2nd of Sivan, same thing. God instructs Moses, you'll be a holy nation for me, and Moses communicates that to the Jewish people. But on Wednesday, which is the 3rd of Sivan, God gives the command to put a fence around the mountain. On Thursday, which is the 4th of Sivan, God gives the command for men and women, husband and wife, to separate from each other. So they have the same outline of what occurred on each day, except that the rabbi's opinion was everything was a day later. What happened on Sunday, according to Rabbi Yossi, happened on Monday, according to the rabbis, and so on. Okay. So now we know what they agree on and what they're arguing about. They agree the Jews arrived in Sinai on the 1st of Sivan. They agree the Torah was given on Shabbat. They disagree when was the 1st of Sivan. Rabbi Yossi says the 1st of Sivan was on a Sunday, and therefore Shabbat happens to be the 7th of Sivan, and the Torah was given on the 7th of Sivan. The rabbis say that Jews came to the Rosh Chodesh was on Monday, so they arrived in Sinai on Monday, and then the Shabbat is the 6th of Sivan. That's when the Torah was given. Who's right? Who's wrong? We know nowadays we do Shavuot on the 6th of Sivan, by the way. Let's analyze this opinion. The Talmud is now going to ask a very strong question according to Rabbi Yossi. A very strong question. Because now the next few pages are going to be questions and answers, proofs and disproofs to try to prove one opinion versus the other, and then you'll come up and try to resolve them. It gets very exciting. Maybe we'll go through some of it. But we're going to go through today one powerful question and then an amazing answer, an amazing defense. Meisaveh, the Talmud raises a question. The command that God gave to Moshe, and Moshe gave to the Jewish people to husband and wife to separate. What's the language? What did the Torah say? We had it in our verses when we opened up, but here the Talmud repeats it. The command was, God tells Moshe, "V'kidashtem hayom u'machar." You should sanctify yourselves, separate yourselves today and tomorrow. What does that imply? 2 days, today and tomorrow. No. According to the rabbis, when was the command given for Prisha, for husband and wife to separate from each other? On Thursday, right? Monday they came to Sinai. Tuesday God told them we're going to be a holy nation. Wednesday he gave the command to fence off the mountain. Thursday he told them, sanctify yourselves, separate today and tomorrow, which is Thursday, Friday. And then Shabbat they're going to receive the Torah. Makes a lot of sense. According to Rabbi Yossi, Sunday they came to Sinai. Monday was the command, was the proclamation, you're going to be a holy nation. Tuesday was the command to fence off the mountain. Wednesday, they were told to separate from their wives or husbands, hayom u'machar, today and tomorrow. That's Wednesday and Thursday. But the Torah was given on Shabbat. So what happened on Friday? Friday they didn't have to separate. The whole point was to remain separated till the Torah was given. So the Gemara says, Kasha de Rabbi Yossi. This that the Torah says only separate for 2 days, today and tomorrow, is a big question against the opinion of Rabbi Yossi that they came to the mountain on Sunday and the Torah was given on the 7th of Sivan. It seems to be a support for the opinion of the rabbis that they arrived at Sinai on Monday, the 1st of Sivan, and the Torah was given on the 6th. And on Thursday, they were told to separate for 2 days, Thursday and Friday. It's a big question according to Rabbi Yossi. The literal words of the verse seem to support the view of the rabbis and refute the view of Rabbi Yossi. Yossi says, listen to this. I'll give you an answer that'll knock your socks off. Amalacha Rabbi Yossi says, Yoim echad hoisif Moshe midaitai. You're right. The verses imply there were only 2 days of separation. That would be Wednesday and Thursday. And then the Torah should have been given on Friday, the day after the separation. But Moshe Rabbeinu, on his own accord, without being instructed by God, added an extra day of separation, an extra day of preparation, and delayed the giving of the Torah for a day. Friday was added by Moshe, another day of separation and preparation, and the Torah was given on Shabbat, the 7th of Sivan. Moshe delays it a day on his own. Wow. What's going on over here? Why is he doing that? Has he have the authority to do that? The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi said, there's a very beautiful teaching in a Brisa that teaches. We know there are 3 things, 3 different instances where Moshe acts on his own, makes his own decision without being instructed by God. And after the event, we find out that God agrees with what Moshe does on his own. So Moshe steps in and does something by himself, and then God says, good job. I like what you did. What were these 3 things? So the Talmud says, number 1, we just said, is where he added an extra day of separation and preparation and delayed the giving of the Torah a day. Number 2, Pirush Min Isha, he separated or divorced from his wife. And number 3, Vishavar es haluchos, he broke the tablets, he broke the 10 commandments. These are 3 things he was not told to do it by God. He did it on his own, which is very strange because a person like Moshe Rabbeinu, the Eved Nemon, the ultimate iconic faithful servant of God, doesn't lift a finger without God saying, lift a finger. Every move is calculated. Every move is instructed by God. He never does something on his own. Doesn't have his own opinion. If God says, I do. He doesn't say, I don't. 3 times he steps out of line. He does it on his own. And afterwards, God says, you got it. I agree with you. You did a good job. Let's explore these 3 scenarios, one applicable to our case here, but the 2 others are very interesting as well. We're going to go through each one now. We just said that the first thing was that Moshe added an extra day of preparation and separation, delaying the day of the giving of the Torah. He added Friday, so the Torah was given on Shabbos. By the way, before we go into this thing, I just want to ask you a question. I'm not going to give an answer now. It's your homework. Just think about what we've just said. According to Rabbi Yossi, this is like a deep Talmudic question. I want to give you a taste of a deep question, and then you'll come back to me with an answer, if you can. According to Rabbi Yossi, the Jews arrive at Sinai on Sunday. On Wednesday, they're told to separate today and tomorrow, today, Wednesday and Thursday. And then ordinarily, the Torah should have been given on Friday. If not for Moshe stepping in, intervening and adding a day. But before Moshe does that, according to the Torah, according to what God's plan was, the Torah should have been given on Friday, right? Hold on a minute. Didn't we just bring scriptural source earlier to prove that the Torah was given on Shabbat and God wanted and planned to give the Torah on Shabbat and gave the Torah on Shabbat? In other words, we learned from the Gzeira Shava, we matched Zachor. The Zachor about Exodus was given on the day. The Zachor of Shabbat was given on the day of Shabbat. We proved that God intended for the Torah to be given on Shabbat. How can Rabbi Yossi say, actually God intended for the Torah to be given on Friday? Moshe happens to step in, and then it's given on Shabbat. Doesn't work. That's an interesting question, a strong question, and I want you to think about it. Okay, let's explore now for the remainder of this class these three instances where Moshe does things on his own and God eventually agrees, and there's so much to learn from them. Number one, Moshe added 1 day of separation and preparation. My Darish, where does he get this from? How do you know to do this? No, this was his rationale. Hashem says, Hayom Machar, you should sanctify yourself today and tomorrow. Hayom Kemachar. So Moshe says, 1 second, today and tomorrow are not the same thing. Because tomorrow begins tonight. We'll have a night and a day, a full 24-hour period. Today, it's daytime now, is only going to be a 12-hour period because we don't have the night before. God didn't come on Tuesday night and tell him today and tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. God came to him Wednesday morning. So Wednesday is going to be only half a day and Thursday will be a full day. So Moshe says something's wrong. When God says Hayom o Machar, today and tomorrow, he means today like tomorrow, meaning just like tomorrow is a full day, 24 hours, today also needs to mean a full day, 24 hours, which must mean that today hasn't begun yet. Today will begin tonight. So that tonight will be today. Tonight will be a full 24 hours. Wednesday night and Thursday. And then tomorrow will begin tomorrow night. Thursday night and Friday. So according to the way that Moses is understanding the word of God, that today needs to be like tomorrow, it cannot begin yet. It only begins tonight, Wednesday night. And it extends to Thursday and Friday. Ends up in total being 2.5 days, but only 2 full days. Just like tomorrow includes the night before. So to today, the first day of separation needs to include the night before. Now the night of Wednesday has already been. So Moshe learns out from here. Today, God must mean the separation needs to occur on 2 days aside from today. 2 full days beginning Wednesday night. That's Moshe's rationale. So he learns out from the verses and from the words, and but probably also what motivated Moshe was understanding that the Jewish people needed more time for preparation, more time for sanctification. And in the end, we're told that God agrees. We just turned the page to page 4. From where do we know that God agrees? If God originally planned for the Torah to be given on Friday, and now all of a sudden he gets an email from Moshe, he gets a letter from Moshe says, hey God, hold on a minute, change of plans, delay everything 24 hours, call your vendors, call the plans, the lightning, the thunder. No, change the whole schedule 24 hours forward. How do you know God agrees? Simple answer. The answer is delay Sharia Shechina Tzarvat Shabbat. Because if God wouldn't agree, what would God respond to all of Moshe's emails? I'm sorry, my friend. There's no change of plans. I plan for the Torah to be given on Friday. I'm coming down the mountain on Friday with the 10 Commandments. You're not ready? Your fault. That's not what happened. God waited. God waited till Shabbat. So if God waited, which means he was in full agreement with Moshe understanding that the separation should occur for an extra day. And that explains the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. This is all an answer to our question. But the fact that you have to only separate 2 days, today and tomorrow, seemed to support the view of the rabbis that the separation began on Thursday morning, and it applied to Thursday, 12 hours, and a whole Friday, today and tomorrow. Rabbi Yossi says, no, today and tomorrow starts Wednesday night, a full Thursday, a full Friday, and this is one of the things that Moshe adds on his own, and God agrees. Second thing, Pirish Mene Isha, the second thing that Moshe does is he separates from his wife. It's not clear if he separates from Tzipporah or he divorces her, but after God gave the Torah, they didn't live with each other anymore. What happened? What's the story over here? My Darish, what is Moshe, where did he get this from? Why didn't he go back to live with his wife? I mean, everyone separated from their wives for a few days before the giving of the Torah. Why did he remain separated forever? Nasa kal v'chomer ba'atzmai. Moshe used another principle of interpretation. It's called kal v'chomer. Simple and complex. Kal v'chomer says that if the law is such in a light case, in a simple case, how much more so the law is such in a heavier, more complex, more serious case. For example, if you tell your child, I bought you new shoes, they're not to run around in and play ball. So if you come, and they're for Shabbat or they're for the wedding or whatever, if you come home and those shoes are ruined, you're going to be punished. Imagine you tell it to your child. The child comes home, his shoes are ruined, his pants are torn, he's scraped his hands, and his shirt is filthy. You tell your child, now I'm really going to punish you. The child says, hold on 1 second. You said if I come home with torn shoes, I'll get punished. But I didn't come home with torn shoes. I came home with torn shoes and ripped pants and dirty shirt and scraped hands. So we say, Kal v'chomer, how much more so? If I was going to punish you only for ruining your shoes, how much more so if you did that and more? That's the Kal v'chomer principle. A lot of Jewish law is learned out that way, and Moshe uses it in the following way. Omar, he says, all the Jewish people that only once in their life got to speak and communicate with God, and it was at a preordained, predestined time when God came down the mountain. And nonetheless, and still the Torah says, separate from your spouses beforehand so that you're holy and pure when that moment happens. Me, says Moshe Rabbeinu. God speaks to me at any given moment. Doesn't give me a notification, a calendar, schedule when it's going to happen. It can happen at any time. How much more so I have to be separated from my spouse? If, says Moshe, it's important to be pure to the extent that you haven't had relations with your spouse in order to have communication with God. And we see that because the Jewish people were having a one time in their life communication and God said separate. Well, Moshe said, I'm always potentially speaking with God. It could be 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, today, tomorrow, anytime. I have to remain separated from my wife all the time to be prepared to speak with God. Now, by the way, this is not a command that God gave Moshe. This is something Moshe decided on his own. It's just that God agreed to it, as we're about to find out. God didn't command this to Moshe. He could have been married to his wife still. Proof of this, by the way, is that Moshe had many communications with God before the giving of the Torah also. For a year before the Exodus, he spoke to God all the time, and he brought the plagues, and he went to Pharaoh and brought more plagues, and then he came out of Egypt. They were all communications, and he didn't separate from his wife during that time. He lived with her. The whole separation began 2 days before the giving of the Torah. So we see that Moshe could have remained the Moshe Rabbeinu that continuously communicates with God and still be married to his wife. Moshe decides after the giving of the Torah, I have to remain separated from him. From where do we know that God agrees with what Moshe did? Because later in the Torah describes that God tells Moshe after he leaves Sinai, now go tell everybody it's time to return back to your tents, go back to your home, go back into your wife, your husband's tent, and live with each other like a married couple. But right after it says, but you, Moses, you stay with me. From those words, it could simply mean tell everyone to go back to their tent. Moshe, come, I have more to teach you. But Moshe understood it means you stay with me and separate from your wife. So God agrees with what Moshe did. That's one way of understanding. One opinion, or another opinion of how we know God agrees is the famous story when Miriam and Aaron, Moshe's brother and sister, speak negatively about Moshe. They find out that Moshe separated from Tzipporah, from his wife. And Miriam says, how dare he? How dare he separate from his wife and not have a chance to have more children? Which, by the way, is very interesting. Moshe has 2 sons, but no daughters. Though we know there's a mitzvah to try to have a son and a daughter. So he had 2 sons, but no daughter. He should remain married to try to have that mitzvah. So the answer, by the way, is that there's a dispute in the Talmud between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Bet Hillel says you have to try to have a son and a daughter. Bet Shammai says even if you try to have 2 children, even if it's 2 sons or 2 daughters, doesn't matter. What's his proof? His proof is Moshe Rabbeinu only had 2 sons and then separated from his wife. So Miriam and Aaron are speaking Lashon Hara against Moshe Rabbeinu. God gets very upset. He's speaking Lashon Hara against my faithful servant. So Miriam says, yeah, but it's a chutzpah. He's not living with his wife. He's potzipara, poor wife. I'm also a prophet, says Miriam. I also speak to God. My brother Aaron is a high priest. He also speaks to God. We're not separated from our wives. Why this extra stringency of Moshe? So God responds, you're comparing yourself to Moshe. It's true you're a prophet. It's true he's a prophet. It's true many people communicate with God. But nobody communicates with God like Moshe communicates with God. Pe el pe adar b'boy. Moshe I speak to mouth to mouth. 2 eyes, 4 eyes. Most other prophets get their visions in a more of a cryptic way, in a more esoteric way, in a more distant way, in a more cloudy way. But Moshe I speak to like 4 eyes, me and him, we're open, we're alert, we're having an open conversation with each other. That level of closeness, of intimacy, I don't have with any other prophet other than Moshe. That's why. So Moshe has to remain separated from his wife, but this is not a lesson for anybody else. No one else is a Moshe Rabbeinu. We have to actually have the mitzvah, try to get married, try to have children, and find holiness in life like that. There's even a sage of the Talmud, Ben Azai, who never got married. Or he got married, then he got divorced. He was single in the end. And I asked him, why aren't you getting married? And he actually expressed an opinion about getting married and having children. You have to procreate, you have to fill the world with children. They asked him, but you're a hypocrite. You never had any children, you never got married. He said, what should I do? Nafshi chashka b'Torah. My soul yearns Torah. I'm married to Torah. I can't waste time being married. The rabbis were not very supportive or appreciative of that approach. It's holy and it's a mitzvah and it's important to get married, to procreate, to build a family. Moshe is an exception, as God says, because Moshe is Moshe. None of us are like him. But he does that and God agrees with him. Now we're going to do, for the remainder of the class, the final thing that Moshe does on his own. And I want to spend the next few minutes doing this. It's a very powerful lesson. The third thing that he does is Shavar's Haluchas. He breaks the tablets. Okay? Think about what's happening here. Moshe is coming down the mountain after 40 days, and the Jews had just had the revelation from God, and God gave the Torah, and it's so exciting. Now we have these 2 sapphire tablets that God has himself directly, personally engraved the 10 commandments in those sapphire tablets. When do you have God's handiwork in such a level coming down to our world? Everyone is so excited to have this gift from heaven, literally. And Moshe is bringing it down. And he comes down and he sees the Jewish people worshiping the golden calf, which he feels is idolatry. They've forsaken God and they've replaced God with a golden calf, and they're dancing and they're drunk, and it's a very promiscuous scene. Moshe is so disappointed, so brokenhearted, and he says the people don't deserve the Torah. They don't deserve God. I want to smash these tablets. Now, standing there is his brother Aaron. Standing there is are the elders and the wise men, and they see what Moshe is about to do. And they see he wants to break the tablets. And they get Gewalt. How are you going to break them? This is a gift from God to us. It doesn't even belong to you. It belongs to the community. How could you break them? And the Medrash tells us that they begin not only to argue with Moshe, but they begin to fight and wrestle with Moshe. They say, don't break them. And Moshe says, I must. They don't deserve it. Yes, give them another chance. Yes, come there. And they start to wrestle with Moshe. And he's being bombarded by a bunch of people trying to grab the tablets, and Moshe overpowers over them all and smashes the tablets. And that's what the Medrash says that the Torah, the last verse of the Torah says, the last verse, for all the mighty hand, and for all the great awe, which Moshe does in front of the Jewish people. What is the mighty hand that Moshe does in front of the Jewish people? Many things that Moshe did with his mighty hand, but one of the explanations is he overpowers Aaron and all the elders, grabs the tablets away from them, back from them, and smashes the tablets. It's a very dramatic moment. It's a very sad moment. And it leads to a whole process of teshuvah, and the Jews have to really repent and go through another process, and then finally Moshe makes a second set of tablets, and that leads to the story of Yom Kippur. Not for now. My Darish, how does Moshe know to break the tablets? Amari says, Moshe makes a calculation. Again, a Kal V'chomer. He says, one mitzvah called the Karban Pesach that recently got from God. God said, make a Pesach offering and eat it with your family. But God gave one limitation. You know who can't eat it? Called Ben Necha, a stranger. Who's a stranger? Somebody who is estranged from God, estranged from the Torah, estranged from the religion. Somebody who's an apostate, somebody who rejects God, that a disbeliever. That kind of person cannot participate in the Pesach offering. That's one mitzvah, and God says that person cannot participate. Says Moses, HaTorah kulam kan v'Yisrael b'shemodim alachas kama v'kama. Here the entire Torah is being given to them, and they're all apostates, and they're worshiping a different God, and they neglected the God in heaven, and they're rejecting the Torah. Of course they can't participate in the Torah. Of course we have to break the tablets. And God not only doesn't get angry, but God says, you did a good thing, Moshe. Everyone else disagreed. Aaron disagrees, but Moshe does it. And God says, well done, good thing. How do we know? Because the Torah says that when God tells Moshe, go and inscribe a second set of tablets, and it says, write the same text from the first set of tablets, Asher Shibarta, which you broke. Asher Shibarta, which you broke. Omer Reish Lakish interprets the word Asher. Asher can mean Yasher, which means may you be strengthened. Yasher kochacha, may your strength, may you be strengthened for your efforts that you broke the Torah. Here's the source of the words. You ever heard of the word shkoyach? Yasher koach. It comes from here. God tells Moshe, Yasher koach, may you be strengthened for breaking the tablets. I applaud you. You made a good decision. That's how Reish Lakish interprets the words Asher Shibarta, which you broke. Not Asher, but Yasher. May you be strengthened. Well done. Question. It says Asher many, many times in the Torah. Asher is a very common word. Asher, that. Asher, which, Asher, that this, Asher, that. It's a very common word. Why here Reish Lakish knows to interpret that this Asher doesn't just mean Asher, but it means Yasher. It means Ishur. God approves. God gives a compliment. God gives strength to Moshe for breaking the tablets. How does he know that here is it? How does he know that God agrees? Furthermore, there's a big question and this is the last thing I'm going to address for today. Tosfos is one of the commentaries on the side of the Talmud. We didn't have it in the source sheet. Tosfos asks a very big question. He says, Moshe is furious at the Jewish people. He says, you know what? I'm going to break the tablets. Why is that Moshe's decision? Why didn't he do a much better decision? Why doesn't Moshe say, maybe I need to come down the mountain and teach them a thing or two? Never. I've been away for 40 days. They heard God. They were totally mesmerized, elevated, transformed. And then the moment ended. And now they're just trying to figure this whole thing out. They need me to come down and talk to them and teach them and explain to them. And I can teach them about teshuvah. I can give them a chance to repent. They need the Torah now more than ever. Why does Moshe break them? His brother Aaron is right. Don't break them. They need the Torah now. Look who interpreted this for us. The interpretation was made by the rabbi known as Reish Lakish. Who was Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish, one that said, Asher means Yasher. And who was Reish Lakish? Very important to understand his life and his background. Reish Lakish lived the life of a bandit. He was a thief. He was a thug. Maybe even a murderer. Some say he was involved with the circuses, the gladiators of the time. He was a terrible person. And the story goes, the Talmud says that once Reish Lakish saw Rabbi Yochanan, a great sage, but a very handsome, beautiful sage, swimming in the ocean, in the river. And Reish Lakish jumps in and pursues him. Whether he pursues him to murder him, whether he pursues him to assault him, maybe in a sexual way, there's different interpretations. He approaches the beautiful Rabbi Yochanan, and he compliments the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan, And Rabbi Yochanan says, well, I'm complimenting your strength. Look at you. You're a built-up, solid, toned person with your strength. If you would learn Torah, you'd be amazing. And they have a little conversation. And Rish Lakish must have been very impressed by Rabbi Yochanan, impressed by his beauty. And in fact, Rabbi Yochanan says, I'll make you a deal. If you turn your life around and you connect with God and study Torah and change your ways, I'll give you my sister in marriage. And my sister is more beautiful than me. I'm not sure how his sister gave him permission to offer her, but they got married and they had a good marriage with each other. And there's a lot of stories. And Rish Lakish changes his life around. It's possible, by the way, that Rish Lakish originally was born in a religious home and in a faithful home and then left and then came back and became a Baal Teshuvah. Rish Lakish lives a life of transformation. He turned around his whole life. He went through a period of darkness, a period of being a thug, of being a menace, of being a really disturbed, evil person, and then he turned his life around. And for the rest of his life, he not regrets, he appreciates what that transformation did to him. He appreciates of what the void did to him in terms of bringing him a newfound discovery, a newfound inspiration, a newfound connection that he would not have had without that period in time where he was so disconnected. Rish Lakish understands that sometimes you need to break something in order to rebuild it. Sometimes you can't just evolve into something better and greater, but what you need to get to requires a complete deconstruction, a complete breaking, a complete tearing apart of the existing structure, of the status quo, and once it's broken apart, then you can flourish and grow into something new. Like a seed when it's planted in the ground has to rot, and then the tree can grow. Like the lobster living in its shell. You know how the lobster works? The lobster is this soft, gooey sea animal living in its shell, and it grows and grows, and then the shell becomes too small and the lobster becomes uncomfortable, and because it's uncomfortable and in pain, it sheds the shell and grows a new shell, a larger one, and then it continues to grow, and it keeps doing that. Shedding its shell is not an easy process, and it's not a safe one. It's exposing itself to all the dangers in the sea. It hides under a rock, whatever. But it does that because without that, it's going to be in pain. It's never going to grow to its full potential. Rish Lakish understands sometimes in life, with your child, with yourself, with a situation, you can repair it based on what exists. You can work with it. But sometimes in life, there's nothing you can repair unless you're willing to completely break it down, to completely deconstruct it, to completely be ready to shatter the status quo, shatter how you see it, and build it up again and do it better. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu saw. The Jewish people, I could come down and I could teach them to do teshuvah, and I could teach them more Torah, and I could, bring them to improve their ways. I need to do more. They need such a jolt. I need to break these tablets, and we need to start again. And we're told that by virtue of the tablets breaking and the Jews starting again, in fact, the second tablets, the second Torah, were much greater than the first Torah. Much more Torah was given. Greater experiences were had. A lot can be attributed to the second tablets. And you could only get there by breaking the first tablets. Which is why, by the way, when the Jewish people built the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and they built the Aron, the Ark, and the Holy of Holies, and Moses was commanded to put the tablets, the second tablets, in that Holy of Holies, God says, but also collect the broken pieces of the first tablets and put it there as well. Broken pieces, a broken plate, throw it out, buy a new one. These were not just regular broken pieces. These were the broken pieces that led to the rebuilding of the Jewish people's faith and identity and connection and relationship with God. These are precious broken pieces. Store them in the Ark, in the Holy of Holies, right next to the whole pieces. It's a lesson in life. Sometimes we break. Sometimes God breaks us. Maybe right now we're being broken in a way because of coronavirus. Look at it as a shell that is shedding, allowing you to grow into something new, learn something new, discover something that you would not have discovered or learned without it. And this is the third thing that Moshe did without God's permission, but God agreed. That concludes today's Talmud learning. At the end of the source sheet, I've put there a few questions that have summarized what we've learned today, and for you to go through those questions and to review them on your own and review what we learned, and go back to the text too, where you can now see how the Torah text actually fits in with the days of the week. I hope you've enjoyed. It's been a pleasure learning with you. Feel free to comment any feedbacks, and we'll meet you next week, same time, Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. And hopefully without any glitches, we'll start exactly on time. God bless you, and have a good night.